Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We're so happy that you chose to spend this hour with us on this Labor Day weekend, and we trust that you will have a very good experience with us as we pursue some topics that I'm thinking in terms of life skills, maybe later in life, but life skills. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to Dr. Randall Maxey, our founder.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neighbor-Stephens, and welcome Dr. Ivan Walks and Dr. Hines. We do have a very important, interesting topic today. Several weeks ago, too, I think, we featured Miss Mary Alice Johnson, who is the Director of Marketing of Epic Home Health. And I introduced her as being a graduate of New York University. I introduced her as being a former fashion model, both in Japan and in South Africa, as well as here. And she brought such an interesting topic that many of our seniors and those who have family members who are seniors are confronting, and that is, how does survival affect you as you get older based upon the type of care you have that many of us can't afford, the type of advice you get that many of us are given bad or wrong advice, and the fact that we have not appropriately prepared. And like me, many people have thought that they might be immortal. I'm just out right now. So we asked Mary Alice Johnson to come back with a small team of her associates in dealing with senior and elder care. And this should be of interest and importance to not only those of us who are 29 years old, but for those who are really 29 and have relatives that they love that are 65 and above. So I've asked her to join Dr. Neighbor-Stephens, Dr. Walks, and Dr. Hines as our co-moderator and to curate this program of information. And we invite your questions and your comments as we go along. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Mary Alice Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Maxey, and good afternoon, everyone, and esteemed colleagues. I'm, again, very privileged, humbled, and honored to sit alongside Dr. Maxey and all of you, his and our esteemed colleagues, and just be able to support and engage together to try to unravel some of the challenges that we are all facing now, as he said, as we are preparing for either ourselves or our loved ones to age in place, to get the information that we need that will help set us up for success and learn how to navigate and who is there to help us navigate this process. So as Dr. Maxey said, my role with Epic Home Health is the Director of Marketing, and Epic Home Health is home health services that we provide, like skilled nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, infusion therapy, medical social worker, medication management, all of these services that are ordered by a physician when the physician identifies those needs in the home for the patient. And again, it's the patients who are eligible are patients who are homebound, because that is the Medicare requirement. And these services are covered by Medicare. And my role with Epic is as the Director of Marketing to build relationships with the hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, senior living communities, nursing homes, boarding care, any entity that supports a senior, as well as professionals like estate planning attorneys, fiduciaries, care managers, caregiving agencies, hospice workers, anyone, again, who has anything to do with helping a senior to age in place safely and with dignity. And it is my pleasure to build these relationships. And I'm very privileged and very grateful that two of my amazing colleagues and referring partners are here with us today to talk about their expertise in the senior aging in place process, as requested by Dr. Maxey, to take this talk to the next level, to talk about how to put pieces in place like a living trust, like what is the care manager and how can they benefit an individual and a family? Who do you go to for that? And also long-term care insurance. And we talked a little bit about that last week. And I really emphasized the importance of getting ahead of that for ourselves while there's still a sweet spot in the age that we may be at before it's cost prohibitive, right? And I learned, unfortunately, that my number one colleague I wanted to bring is a New York Life agent. She is my investment advisor and is managing my long-term care insurance. She's not allowed to do live streaming shows as per her employment contract with New York Life. And I'm so sorry that she couldn't be here. She did send me some information that I can share. And of course, I can give her name and contact information. And she is more than happy to educate, consult with anyone who is interested to be able to answer questions and help people get on a path of getting this piece in place for themselves. So I would like to introduce Condra Griffin, who is a fiduciary, and my layman's term definition of a fiduciary is a trusted advisor who helps navigate all of the pieces of care coordination, such as estate planning and living trust, putting the individual in contact with those entities that need to do that and doing it herself. She's going to give you the proper definition, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what the fiduciary does and why they are an integral part of seniors aging in place. We also have with us today Lynn Inez, who is a registered nurse and case manager. And Lynn and I work together at Arosa Caregiving Agency. Again, another resource that we need to know about, because as I shared with you 2 weeks ago, the Department of Health and Human Services has said that 70% of Americans are going to need a caregiver, and for an average of 3 years. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And we need to know where to go when those needs come up. So Lynn is going to talk to you about her role as a care manager and how she helps what we all do, which is help individuals and their families navigate the complexities of care coordination, really bringing them peace of mind. So without further ado, I'd love to have Condra start. And Condra, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what a fiduciary is officially, and then what you do. And
yes. Thank you. Thank you again, Mary Alice, for this wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to you all about what I love to do, what I consider to be my purpose in life, and also explain it, because a lot of times when I do tell people that I'm a fiduciary, they don't really know what that is. And it gives me the opportunity to, to share again what I do and why I love what I do and who I help and what it's really all about. But just so you know, I am a California licensed professional fiduciary. I've been a fiduciary for a little over 5 years. I was actually working as a trustee and a power of attorney for a couple of cases before I got licensed. So I have a lot of experience in it before getting the license, but I also have at least, I can say about 20 years experience working with an estate planning attorney as well, who provides trust, wills, power of attorney for wealth and health for his clients. And I was his manager in his office at that time. But so just so you know, so it's clear that what a fiduciary is, it's a professional that's typically licensed by the state of California, if you're in the state of California. And we serve as a professional trustee, a professional power of attorney for wealth and health, and an executor of a will. Also, being a fiduciary and licensed as a fiduciary, I'm able to be appointed by the court with a judge who wants to have a professional put in place when someone doesn't have a will or had a will but couldn't be found, or whatever the case may be, or if families are in dispute and they need a professional to come in to settle the matters, I will be appointed to handle that matter. And this type of work that I do as a fiduciary it's more than just a job for me. It's more than just a business. It's my purpose. I grew up knowing my great-great-grandmothers and my grandmothers and great-grandmothers and whatnot. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to know them, to care for them, and to also help transition them to that next level of life. And for me, that was the greatest joy in my whole entire life. And I'm so humbled that I had that opportunity, because not everybody gets the chances to know their great-great-grandmothers or their great-grandmothers for that matter. So I was awarded that opportunity. And from that point on, I've seen this as something that I wanted to do for others, because I have such a fondness for elders and seniors and those with disabilities who need support and help. And that's what me as a fiduciary does. We help people like that who need us to help them in their lives move on from one stage of their life to the next. So that's what a fiduciary does in a nutshell. Part of also what I do is I make communications and fill in gaps, and I fulfill needs, and I manage the affairs of a person who can no longer do it for themselves. I am the type of fiduciary that can find you placement. I can settle your financial affairs. I can be your representative in banks and institutions, hospitals, and things of that sort. I serve as your liaison or as your representative and advocate. So it's just an honor for me to be able to do this for others. I have to say, it's such a rewarding opportunity that I've been given, and I use the utmost of respect, and I have lots of love for the clients that I serve. So
Yes, I can attest to that. Thank you for that very detailed introduction, Chandra, and the definition of a fiduciary. And I can attest to her passion and her level of excellence and commitment, because we have worked together with clients. As I shared, we are referring partners, trusted referral partners. Chandra, you touched upon a word, advocate, and I don't want to overstep Dr. Maxey, but I wanted to catch that so that it really help out everyone participating, help them understand that is really encapsulates the work that you do. You're an advocate for individuals who cannot advocate for themselves or need assistance. Can you talk a little bit about that, and one success story maybe that you can share with us? Give us an example. Uh-oh. Oh, did we lose Chandra?
I think we did lose Chandra.
Oh, she's on a ship in Mexico, so hopefully she'll join us again. Well, Dr.
There
Maxey,
she is.
oh,
I think she's back. We need to unmute her if we can. And next time she can just invite us all to the ship in Mexico.
Right? I agree. Is she there? I don't see her.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
Good.
A bit of technical difficulty, but I do apologize for that.
So I have a question too to pile on top of what Mary Alice said. How would a normal person contact? Why would we need you? How would we get on? We have to be referred by a doctor? Can we just call you? How do you get a fiduciary in your life, and who needs to have one?
And I don't know, he said he was piggybacking on my question. I don't know if you heard my question because you got disconnected. Did you hear my? You did not? Okay, right. So it's a piggyback. My question was, you mentioned the word advocacy and advocate. Yes. I wanted you to please, I thought that really encapsulated what you do as a fiduciary. And I was asking if you could please expand on that, what that actually means, and give us a success story, an example of a case where you had success in advocating for someone who couldn't advocate for themselves or needed assistance. And then Dr. Maxey's question is a perfect follow-up to that.
Okay, good. So remind me of Dr. Maxey's question after I answer yours, if you don't mind.
Sure will.
Okay. So really honestly, when we have estate plans put in place, before that even happens, we are trying to figure out who would be the appropriate person to handle our affairs. Now, a lot of times what we do, we typically think of family, we think of siblings, we think of children to fulfill that role. Now, most of the time, depending on the job that you are asking someone to do, you're asking them to take on this role. Hey, be my fiduciary, be my trustee, be my power of attorney for wealth and health, which is another job within itself. Because if you're someone that needs a lot of attention or a lot of assistance with your day-to-day activities or managing your assets and things of that sort, it can be very time consuming. So what you always want to do is consider hiring a professional fiduciary to handle that task for you. Now, mind you, and I tell this to my clients all the time, if you are someone that may have had only one child and it's just you and that child and maybe your husband or whatnot, adding them, making them your trustee, making them your power of attorney seems to be the right thing to do, because really, honestly, that person would have a lot more time and would not have to worry about other beneficiaries or other siblings to have to manage all of that and the complexities that come with this role. But when you have children, when you have more than one child, or you have a lot of family and you anticipate on sharing your wealth with a lot of family members and whatnot, you might want to consider having a professional handle those affairs, because it becomes quite complex when you're dealing with a lot of different emotionalities, a lot of different personalities that have differences of opinions about what they should do or how things should be handled. And with the professional like me, I have no personal interest in the matter. My only objective is to serve you, is to advocate for what you want and what you desire. And that is always usually spelled out in your estate planning documents. With those estate planning documents, it's very clear as to what my role is and what my duties are. So I adhere to that. I stick to it. I don't deviate from it. I don't side with one side of the family or the other. I'm only sticking to what my client wants me to do and it has instructed me to do, and that's all I'm going to do. Sometimes that is not always the objective of others, and it's okay. I mean, sometimes as a daughter, but like myself, I may have a different way of thinking about how to care for my mother, whereas my sister may have a different opinion about how to care for our mother. Or my brother may have a different opinion on how I care for, or how we care for our mother. And with those differences of opinion, they tend to cloud the real objective here. And that is advocating for the parent, making sure that the wishes of the parent are executed, and it's executed in a timely fashion. And as a professional, that's what I do. I do it in a timely fashion. I make sure that I stick to the letter of the trust or the document, and I do just that. And I will advocate for them as well, meaning that I put their needs above my own. I don't have a personal objective or really honestly an opinion about what needs to be done for my client. It's all about them and what they want. But it's very important that they have an estate plan to follow that, so that I have a blueprint or a guideline to go by.
Okay, and Dr. Maxey's question, if you want to repeat it, doctor, or I can, either way, sir.
My question is who needs a fiduciary? You've mentioned some of that, but do you have to be referred by a physician or a hospital? Can we just go to Yellow Pages and look up a fiduciary in your state or your area? How do you determine your need for that skill?
Thank you for asking. So we do have an organization that most of the licensed professional fiduciaries are a part of, which is the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. It's a website that you can go on to, and you can find a fiduciary in your area. Or if you, a lot of my business that I get is referral based. So someone would hear about me or hear what I do from another person who's either used my service or knew about someone that needed my service or whatnot. But I'm also trackable on the internet. If you type in fiduciary in Marina Del Rey, California, for that matter, you should see me pop up, but also too, using the resource of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California is a great way to find a fiduciary in your
What if
area.
somebody lives in Florida? They have to get a fiduciary in their area?
Well, see, okay, so because California has the role in a name it fiduciary, Florida doesn't. Florida considers me to be either a national guardian or a personal representative. It's still the same job title in the respect of the work that we do, but the wording is different. And also, we don't have to be licensed to be a personal representative in Florida. So it's a little bit different. Every state does their own different thing, but at the same time, we're always considered national guardians.
Thank
National
you.
guardians.
Yes, in any state where that's national.
Okay. I have a question, but I want to see if anyone else has a question first.
Sure.
No one so far? I think it would really help if you could paint a picture for us of what your job is and how you manage a case from beginning to end, particularly one with family dynamics. And that's what you were really illustrating earlier when you were being so diplomatic about the differences of opinion of family members.
Yeah.
We are,
Well,
in healthcare, we are all very familiar with dealing with family dynamics where there are divisions and where there is strife. You are an integral part of resolving that in the way that benefits what the direct user, the individual, the person who holds the trust, the person who holds the estate plan, you are helping to affect their wishes. Can you give us an example? Oh, go ahead, Dr.
Trust, what if a person, Miss Jones, who goes to Beulah Baptist Church and she's not that rich, does she have to have a trust? In other words, how would the average person find out if they need a fiduciary? How can, and not necessarily be from California, I wanted to apply to a general person that might be on this call.
Okay, sure. So say for instance, Mrs. Jones from the church doesn't have a lot of money in her bank account, but she owns a home. Let's say she owns a home, and that's pretty much her biggest asset. What Mrs. Jones will want to do is open up a trust and have the trust be placed, have the property be placed in the trust. With doing that, she will have benefits awarded to her or that she would be eligible for if and at any moment she needs long-term care insurance and never paid for long-term care insurance in her past or when she was younger. So say for instance, so she has a home, it's now in a trust, but she wanted to hire someone to administrate her trust when that time comes. So she didn't want her family to do it. She didn't want her children to do it because they have differences of opinion about what's going to happen to her home if something happened to her. And she didn't want them fighting. She didn't want them arguing about who gets what and all that. She made it very clear what she wanted to have happen when she talked to the attorney to set up this trust.
Can one of the children get a fiduciary?
So here's the thing. So depending on the type of attorney that she goes to that understands the complexities of dealing with families and naming family members as trustees, a lot of attorneys nowadays are getting more wiser and hip to referring them to fiduciaries. So most of the attorneys that I know would say, hey, you know, you have a big family or you have a very complex family and different dynamics. Why don't you look into hiring a fiduciary or naming a fiduciary to be your trustee in your trust? And typically most clients go for that because they understand like, hey, this is a person that doesn't have any personal interests, that is going to look at things from a professional perspective and is going to do what I want them to do and adhere to my trust. So yeah, I'm going to name Condra Griffin as my trustee in my trust. So you're saying what, sorry to interrupt you. You're saying if someone didn't know about a fiduciary, they could learn about the fiduciary by being referred by the estate planning attorney or the trust attorney who put their trust together, right? That's correct.
That's one way.
Or
word
just
of-
do Google research on what a fiduciary is, a California licensed professional fiduciary.
Right.
And what
Well,
is,
we're
it's a
talking about
lot of
people-
information online.
And most of
We're
our
talking
people
about people
come
who
from
may not
California.
know.
Okay, so I understand that this is part of the problem with my field of work. Because this is not a term that many people have heard of,
Right.
it's always me trying to educate, or always me educating those on who I am and what I do. And unfortunately, not everyone knows. Not everyone is just going to know. I mean, it's a work in progress in the respect of our field and how we're getting the word out there for what we do and how do we serve, those in the community, and just those who have no idea what a trust is, what a will is, and what not. For me, I'm always trying to find ways to explain that.
Dr. Maxey, did you want any more elaboration on that? Because I think this is a good lead into about a trust and long-term care insurance.
Good, go right ahead.
So
Neighbor Stevens or Dr. Walsh has a question or anything in the chat?
Oh, someone is asking there. Let's see.
Dr. Stevens, Dr. Walsh?
Nothing in the chat as yet. I'm listening and learning.
Chandra?
Yes, so
this is a good segue to explaining. So we know that we can hear about a fiduciary from an estate planning attorney or word of mouth from someone who's used one. I imagine that the use of a fiduciary is going to continue to increase as we are living longer and these needs are appearing more and more.
Yes.
And really benefit the senior population, or anyone for that matter, but as we're talking about seniors specifically. There are pieces that need to be put in place first. Like you said, there had to be a trust before you come along to help manage it, or you come along to help now distribute it once the person has made their transition. The estate plan, the trust, can you give us a chronology of which comes first and how we would go about establishing all of these instruments in a way that helps set up the individual for success and helps mitigate any kind of complexities with the family, et cetera?
Okay, so here's the thing, and this is one of the things I just wanted to bring up really quickly. Our community was never taught about trust and wills, powers of attorney. We did not have any understanding of it. It was a concept that was created by those that employed us or that made us employed. And just, for, saying it better, I guess. So this concept was built long time ago, the complexities of trust and how they're built, why they're made, and things of that sort. So it is now becoming like something that we all need to really take note of. Everyone should be thinking about an estate plan, not just one particular culture, but all cultures, because we all need some type of plan set for ourselves. Okay, so at the beginning, we're looking at what our assets are, because that determines what type of documents we're going to have, or what type of documents we're going to start with.
Exactly.
For the most part, you would definitely establish a trust if you own any real estate. Okay, that is the best and safest way to safeguard that asset from any outside sources that might want to take it from you or take a part of it if you, the person, happens to owe a big tax bill or a medical bill or something like that. So it's always important. If you own real estate, get a trust, put the property in your trust, let the trust own it. It's a separate entity. It's still yours. There's still a great connection between you and your trust, but it is the best way for you to be able to qualify for some of the benefits that you may need later on in life.
Which are, what are some of those benefits, Chandra?
Long-term care insurance.
And
we're all going to get to a point we're going to need long-term care insurance. And you might want to get that together now while you can.
So what is the reason for putting the home in the trust? I did go over this last week, but from your expertise, can you explain why it's beneficial to put the home in the trust?
Okay, so the major benefit of having your property in a trust is to allow yourself to be qualified for the benefit that we as U.S. citizens have, and that is Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal offers long-term care insurance. And if you weren't someone who purchased long-term care insurance at a younger age and paid into it all the way up until you needed it, you will need long-term care insurance in the event something happens.
So Medi-Cal is the same as
tragedy.
Medicaid in other states, right?
Yes.
No. Well, yeah, no. The names are different, but
We're not limited to Californians on this phone call. I'm trying to apply it
Okay.
nationally.
okay. Yes, so yes, then that would be yes. That's correct.
But I think Dr.
California
Nibrit
changed it
Stevens
to
had
Medi-Cal.
something to share. Dr. Nibrit Stevens, you were shaking your head. Can you share what you were thinking?
Oh, I was responding to the statement that Medi-Cal is the same as Medicaid around the country, which is not true. Each
Correct.
state's Medicaid is state-specific and quite state unique.
Right. Absolutely.
That's
Thank
correct.
you for that.
They do
So-
have some of the same components, but at the same time, Medi-Cal is a California public benefit for its
So how would it
citizens
apply
in
to
that
other
state.
states? I'm curious. I don't want to stick to the rules of California when we have people from New York and other states here.
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, the thing is, because every state runs differently, you just have to educate yourself with either that particular agency itself to find out what their rules are, what their qualification requirements are to know. But with California, for that matter, it's a matter too of going to an office or even finding a agent that can help educate you on how to become qualified for it.
You just said something that I didn't know. You said Medi-Cal provides long-term care insurance. Is that what you meant? Or can you tell us more about that, please?
Yes. So given a scenario, say for instance, you have a grandmother or a loved one who is up in age. She doesn't have long-term care insurance of her own. She's never paid into a private plan or whatnot for long-term care insurance. And she has a home, it's in a trust, or if it's not in a trust for that matter. And something happens, something tragic happens, she falls. So what happens is she goes to the hospital and they treat her for the fall, but they realize she needs rehabilitation. She needs additional support, additional health care that the hospital will not be able to give her. Now, if she's over the age to receive Medicare, 100 days of Medicare compensation will kick in, okay? And within that 100 days, the hospital will support her, and then they will transition her to a rehabilitation center or a skilled nursing facility, whichever offers the services that she may need to rehabilitate herself from this fall, right? She has 100 days with Medicare. But after that 100 days are done and over with, and she still needs more rehabilitation, who is she gonna get the support from? Will it come from Anthem, Blue Cross, her medical plan? Unless she has long-term care insurance with them, of course. So what then happens is she's gonna need to find a way to get long-term care insurance to pay for the facility, or if she can't do that, she would have to pay out of pocket. Now we're talking about fees ranging from $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month. Okay.
Right. So the long-term care insurance is insurance that's available to pay for caregivers or home health services, or if you are in
That's
a
correct.
skilled nursing, if you're in an assisted living facility, it pays for that as well. I'm not aware of Medi-Cal paying for that, so that's interesting. I want to learn more about that. There is some
Yeah,
new
you do have to qualify. You do have
Okay.
to qualify. And you qualify based upon the amount of income you bring in on a monthly basis. Thank God that the laws have changed in California to up that requirement. And I believe by year 2024, 25, I can't remember, don't quote me on it, but there's going to be no income requirement.
So are
So-
you also thinking of in-home supportive services or separate?
Oh, yeah, most
talking about-
definitely.
So, but are you talking about long-term care insurance that is an insurance policy that you buy out of pocket, but you're saying the government is going to pay for it now?
Yeah, so it's one or the other. You know, you either have the means to pay for long-term care insurance out of pocket monthly, you know, then that service kicks in when you need it, or you can have Medi-Cal come in and step in and pay a portion, if not all, of the fees that are associated with living in a facility or even needing care professionals at your home.
Mary
Okay,
Alice,
so go right
Ma'am?
ahead, doctor.
I want to ask Shonda a specific question, but before I ask her the question, I want to make a general comment. Like so many other things in the healthcare arena, things have been birthed and hatched in California that eventually make it across the country. This Medi-Cal concept that we've been talking about is not something that is in place the way she is describing it for Medi-Cal. But I want to quickly say that there are components and ways of achieving some of the same things, but in a different way in most of the other states. This requires, again, I seem like I say this every week, you have to start to find out what is in your community. Generally speaking, there is a federal program under different names, but it's the same program that aims to keep people in their home. They're called community and home-based services, or they may be called long-term services and supports. They have all kinds of different names in different states. But what they attempt to do is what we've been generally talking about, which is once your Medicare benefits are exhausted, they help to wrap around, that's another term you'll hear used.
Yes.
They wrap around and attempt to fill in the gaps that are needed, whether we're talking about skilled nursing, long-term care, or whatever. So I wanted to interject that because I have a feeling that people who don't live in California are saying, wow, I need to go move to California. No, probably not. You probably are, you just need to learn what's available in your local community. In all states, there are agencies for the aged. And that's a good place to start trying to find out what services are available and how you can meet your needs. But my question to Shonda is, could you please, and we're kind of getting short on time, enumerate what all of us in terms of family, in terms of estate planning and family management, what are the things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what are the things that we need to put on our to-do list today?
Oh, great question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And it's so important. So I want to make this really clear. Okay. Figure out what you have. Like, you know what accounts you have. You know what properties you own. You know what assets you have, annuities and pensions and all these different things that you accumulated over your years of living. Decide what you want to do with that when that time comes. I mean, that's number one thing. Number two is deciding or figuring out or even coming up with a list of people who you trust to help you execute those wishes of division of property and assets and things of that sort. So when you do this, when you have this information, you gathered it, right? And you made it clear what you want, what your intentions are. That's when you go into action of creating your estate plan and getting those estate planning documents together. And the beauty of it is a lot of these documents are online and they are free, okay? Power of attorney for wealth is online and it's free. California statutory will is online and it's free. The trust is online and it's free. Now, a trust is very complex. It's a very complex document. And when you have a lot of intricate details that you want to have set and made plain in your trust, it may not be the right idea for you to try to figure that out on your own. You will want to seek counsel to help you figure that all out and place it in the appropriate places in a trust. But these are things that you really, really, really need to have set in your mind as to what you want. And then you start the execution process by setting up those documents to have those executed. It's so important. And if you don't do if you don't do a trust, if you don't do a power of attorney for wealth or a power of attorney for health, do a will, okay? Get a will. You can print it out online. If you do nothing else in life, you have a will.
And
A will is
before I-
notarized or witnessed.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we move on to Ms. Lynn Inez, thank you for enumerating that as she asked,
Sure.
as Dr. Nabrit Stevens asked. It's very important before we wrap up with you that you please explain the benefit tax-wise of the living trust, because that's what I talked a lot about a couple weeks ago, and that is one of the main benefits of the living trust. And for someone out there who may be listening and really contemplating this, that's a huge benefit. If you can share briefly, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
So just real quick. So with having a living trust, a revocable trust, irrevocable trust, you're setting up a different entity. So it's a different vehicle. It's like a different you, in other words, or another you for that matter. So when you have property that's owned by a trust, assets that the trust owns, the trust now becomes the responsible party to manage and also take care of any tax liability that comes with owning those assets or owning that property or whatever it is, okay? So what that means is the individual itself would not be responsible for the taxes. The trust would be responsible for the taxes. So when you get to the point where God has brought you home and someone is administrating your trust, they're looking at all your assets. They're marshaling all your assets. They're putting them all together. They're liquidating everything. And they come to this grand total, right? Once that grand total is identified, and you also know who that money is going to be distributed to, you would then pay all the expenses that come along with those assets. If it's capital gains taxes from any of the investment assets that you have, the trust would pay for that. Any other taxes that are due, if you have personal taxes or estate taxes, the trust pays for that. And the remaining balance is what would be distributed to the beneficiaries once all is said and done.
Chandra, can you put your name and contact information in the chat? And thank you for that. And we really appreciate your expertise and look forward to hearing how people can benefit from you or their local fiduciary. Thank you so much. Dr. Maxey, before we bring on Lynn Inez, did you or anyone else have any questions or comments for Chandra?
No, I don't. Let's get to the next speaker on.
Lynn Inez, could you tell us about yourself briefly and what you do as a registered nurse case manager?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody.
I'm sorry,
again,
care manager. I apologize. Care manager. Yeah.
Again, thank you for allowing me to be here. It is a privilege to be here, but I do want to let you know that my name again is Lynn Inez. I am an RN, and I have 20 plus years of being in the healthcare industry, dealing with psychiatric nursing. I was a psychiatric nurse dealing with chronic illnesses, home health, home care, and I have some background with pharmaceuticals and also being a hospice liaison in the healthcare industry.
Wonderful, thank you. What is a care manager?
Well, a care manager really, it oversees the complexities of the healthcare system for the family and untangles some of those situations that they're in. For instance, if they needed to talk with a fiduciary, I would refer them to Condra, okay? Or if they needed home health, I would refer them to Mary Alice. So I'm sort of like, I oversee everything, and if they need caregiving, then I would provide services. Now, it's a little bit different in that we accept long-term care insurance, okay?
Right.
That's why it's very important to set that up ahead of time. We do, and everything's out of pocket.
The
And that's the
caregiving
difference.
expense and the long-term care
And the
insurance.
care management. Now, there are programs that are available that we can assess to see if that individual is eligible. For instance, we're now a vendor for veterans. So
Nice.
anybody that has TRICARE or TriWest in California is eligible, and this just came up, for home care, and that's free.
Wonderful.
We also, but they have to check their eligibility. So it's a matter of just first checking with us and let us see. Another situation is we are now a vendor for Partners in Care, and that's through Medi-Cal, and they will see if they're eligible for home care services or even care management. And that again is partnering with Partners in Care. So we could look up resources to see if it can be covered, but in general, it is out of pocket.
Okay. How would we bring on a care manager who would identify as needing a care manager?
Well, again, this is where we oversee the caregivers, all right? And let's say there's a daughter from out of town, and she just needs to know what are the local resources that are available, and what type of structured activities can we provide for mom? Or because home health is it is through Medicare, and they're not eligible for Medicare services for home health, what can you do as an RN to help with the complexities of what's going on with their health? So I sort of like look at what their needs are and then go from there from a holistic perspective. So if they need someone to do med management, I'm there. If they need somebody to escort them to the doctor's office, explain what's going on with their disease and provide the education, I'm there. If they need to get involved with, again, any type of structured activities, I can look at senior citizens, community centers. I could set them up with peer support groups, with any other types of services that they need to enhance the quality of their life and provide a sense of meaningness, and where they don't feel so isolated.
Right.
Because we know that with social isolation, right, that is basically a risk for mortality.
Yeah.
Social isolation. And so an antidote to social isolation is providing services so that they're socially engaged. They have the social support. And that's where a caregiver can come in as a companion. They can also involve them with activities. They can, help them. Of course, we know that sometimes they may have difficulty with everyday tasks because of the physical and mental health complications, comorbidities, et cetera. This is where a caregiver can help. They can be there to assist them.
And then
even just providing.
You oversee the caregiver's work. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
And
And
so
I'm
if
there
you're
to-
at the agency, you staff the caregiver, you manage the caregiver's support of the caregiver team support of that individual. It's almost like a personal assistant.
It is.
And she's very good at it. And she's extremely good at it.
Yes,
I use
Thank you.
I use Lynn for a lot of my client related matters, and she's wonderful at it. I have to say,
Lynn,
it takes a load off of me as a fiduciary too.
exactly. And that's why we all are so fortunate to do this work together and be trusted referral partners, because
Yes.
each role is so needed for a senior aging in place. I say it all the time. We have someone
Yes.
for every need that a senior will need as they age in place. And that's why this opportunity is so special, to be able to educate the community, the global community, certainly the national community. Lynn, what about people who cannot afford the private out-of-pocket pay for caregiving? You know, we are so used to dealing with this and having to say, I'm so sorry, we can't help you, but we can refer to other publicly funded resources, although they are minimal in scope. They're not as
Yes.
deep and broad as our private caregiving, but there are some options. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
I had mentioned, again, for veterans that now we're affiliated with TRICARE and TriWest. I had mentioned, like, here in the state of California, Partners in Care, which is basically Medi-Cal. So they're now providing services depending on their eligibility. And then also working with the West Side Regional in California here, and that is state funded. And then seeing again, are they eligible? Are there disabilities that perhaps could put them in that category? So we will look for avenues to help them.
And then we've also talked before about in-home supportive services is a state-funded entity that provides some caregiver hours, usually somewhere between 4 to 6 hours a day. But it's not, you know, the deep and broad support, but at least you have someone there helping with ADLs for that amount of time, if they are not able to afford it out of pocket and they are covered by Medicare or Medi-Cal. We've also talked about strategizing with family and finding other ways to meet that need. For example, families will pool their resources together and pay
Yes.
for hours for mom and dad, right? If they have, you know, children, multiple children, that's a way to look at it, and a way to get help for these individuals as well.
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions so far, please?
Dr. Sherrod has her hand up.
Good
Dr.
afternoon,
Sherrod, you're
Dr.
on mute.
Sherrod. Yeah.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for all of this interesting information. I have a question concerning a person who may not have gotten into the system. This is a person with a chronic disease, needs help. So how does that person access all of the different areas that you've described? The person's personal financial situation is falling apart. She needs housekeeping. She needs somebody to manage her assets. I mean, how do you make that initial contact? If you're in the hospital, you can go through you, right, Mary Alice? But what
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
never have been to the hospital and you're just kind of struggling with this chronic illness at home alone?
Lynn, will
How
you
do you
take that
access?
first, and then we'll.
I
Lynn,
mean,
will you take
sure,
that first?
of course, we're a national corporation. We have 32 offices nationwide, and we're on the website in regards to home care. And because we start with an A, AROSA, we're sort of like at the top. So we do get referrals. We get a lot of referrals in which they need home care in a situation like that, Dr. Sherrod, where they need a home care agency, and then we're available 24/7 to talk with that family in regards to what their needs are.
So that's suggesting that the person take the initiative to look online and find someone, because as Dr. Sherrod said, what if they're not in the hospital and they're declining and they need this assistance? How do they begin to find someone? Obviously, yes, the first way is research and online. Dr. Sherrod, are we on the path to answering that question for you?
Right, what
That's
I'm
obviously
saying,
one way.
yeah, what I'm seeing here is that really there's a need for education about this
Oh,
whole
yeah.
process.
Oh yeah,
And
Yes.
and the reason I bring this
educational
up,
resources too.
so yeah, we need to be talking to the ministers in the churches
Exactly.
and having them to begin to talk about this. And I just went through a situation with a
Yes.
colleague of mine whose niece actually dealt with her situation. She became ill actually and ended up in the hospital. But the niece through the church was able to get her property into a trust. So this particular church was on it. So I'm
Amen.
thinking, we need to have a go to the community thing to educate, because like you said, we as a community and as a culture haven't had to deal with these things because we really didn't have money, didn't have homes. And so now there needs to be a big educational campaign on this, because there are a lot of people who have not been in the hospital, who are just at home suffering and don't really know what to do and how to access anything, or don't even know these
That is so
services
true.
exist. Yeah.
Yes.
That is
Don't know
so
this-
true, Dr. Rashad. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a lot out there to allow us to provide this kind of information and these resources that they could use or know about or find out about. I mean, it just hurts my soul that we can't reach everybody or tell everybody about what's available to them. It's so unfortunate that there are people out there that are struggling and to have no support or don't know where to go. And that's why I always say,
How do we solve that problem?
But that's how we fix the problem, to Dr. Sherrod's point, and that's something that I'm actually working on. And in my role as board director at OPICA, that's a community organization. It's an organization, adult daycare center for adults with dementia and Alzheimer's. I was telling you about that, Dr. Sherrod.
Right.
And I'm also a volunteer program educator with Alzheimer's LA. But the church and every other community resource, we need to go there to them and give them the information. It's incumbent upon us, because when we have it, we're supposed to share it. So the church.
Right.
And I want to take on that task as well. I really do. I want to reach as many people as possible.
Yes, and we can partner in that. I'm doing a health fair for the Roxbury Park Community Center. That's how they will know about home health and all the partners that we work with, such as Lynn and Condra. So those are the avenues through which we can provide the information and people know, because it will be disseminated back to their home eventually.
One last point of clarification I need from Condra, and thank you so much for sharing all that valuable information. I'm kind of confused about putting the property in the trust so that you can get long-term care. Now, are you saying that once you put the property in the trust, the assets are no longer yours and you will qualify for Medi-Cal? Is that what you're saying? I'm not clear on that. I know that.
I'm not gonna say that, because then we're talking about legal aspects, but I am kind of saying that, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I know in most states you have to sell off your assets or get rid of the assets in order to qualify for Medi-Cal.
With a trust, you don't.
No, not
Put it in a trust, and you don't have to do that anymore.
Not for Medicare, Jesse, that's for Medicaid.
Cal.
No, that's what I'm saying, Medi-Cal. I'm saying Medi-Cal, not Medicare, Medi-Cal. In order to qualify for Medi-Cal, because you already got Medicare, but to qualify for Medi-Cal, which is associated with long-term care, you have to erase the assets.
Yes.
Some way.
You have to either drill down on those assets,
right?
Give some money to here, pay bills, big bills, or whatever the case, or protect it in a trust. When you do that, you're taking it out of my name. I'm taking the asset out of my name, and I'm putting it in the trust name. That property value does not go against what I say I bring in or what I own. And then that allows me to qualify much faster.
That's exactly what I thought you meant. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, I'm so sorry if I didn't do that, but thank you for asking me that.
That's a really good question. Dr. Neighbor Stevens, any thoughts and questions, Dr. Walsh?
And then I just want to finish up with Lynn, Dr. Maxey.
Oh, well, go ahead.
My last question for Lynn. No, go right ahead, please, Dr. Neighbor Stevens.
Well, I wanted to first of all say that, again, and I'm trying to make this general to all states and not the specifics of what's going on in California. But I will say that in the course of my work, and even without having the job that I have, there are millions of people in this country who are not necessarily over 65, but who have chronic diseases, are disabled, and most importantly, are alone. And so the thing that we will probably find as the hardest thing to do is how to get the word out to that population. They tend not to be actively engaged in church activities. They're not even leaving the house. They stay at home. So, not to be solved in this meeting, but something that as a community, we need to be very sensitive to, which is how many people are in our community that are totally isolated and need help. And the help, they just don't know that the help is available.
Yes.
But not only that, they have to have a level of wanting help. They have to be at that level to want the help. I mean, we could talk about this all day long, but if you really, really want the help, you will look for it. But there are those who really need help and don't ask. They don't even bother anyone. They tend to take on whatever's coming their way on their own and suffer through it. And it's very disheartening to see, because you like, as a professional, come on, let me help you. And then you get a lot of pushback a lot of the times. Even when
this is a great place to start, Kandra. This is a great place to start, and we really appreciate your contribution. Absolutely. I want to just finish up with one last question to Lynn.
Ask for help. Ask for help. Ask for help. No, Lynn, I really have to implore everyone on that. Please ask for help.
Thank you, Kandra. Lynn, can you give us one final important piece about the access to how to access a care manager and what the main benefit to having a care manager is?
To access a care manager, it's really the education, because again, not many people know what a care manager is. And it's through, first, they know about caregiving, but then to add on that value added service of someone overlooking everything that's going on in regards to their healthcare is just unbelievable, of the resources that a case manager can provide for that family member. And if they're resisting in care of a loved one, I'm dealing with family dynamics. And just being a psych nurse, I'm able to talk with the family members and figure something out. What can we do to provide the care that your mom needs?
Yes.
So
you are a problem solver for the family.
Yes.
As they're navigating that care coordination for the individual. I just want to clarify and make sure everybody understands the care manager service is also paid out of pocket. It's usually about $175, $180 an hour here in California. Yes. And this is a service, Medicare just put up an initiative, President Biden, the Biden-Harris initiative for negotiating prescription drug plans with the pharmaceutical companies has just been put into effect as of September 1st. So with that and the initiative that Dr. Jocelyn Hines brought up 2 weeks ago that I've researched further, the initiative for the Biden-Harris initiative for providing funding for caregivers, for in-home caregivers, is moving forward. It's not in full effect yet, but the government is aware that families cannot sustain this. And I did mention to you all the example of how there was an initiative even 5 years ago to do this, where if, for example, your caregiving rate is $30 an hour, the government is proposing, that they may pay $15 of it, and then $15 of it is for the family to pay. So a lot of work being done administratively, proactively, politically, to help navigate the care coordination of senior citizens in the US. And we have a lot of work still to do, but we have to start with this, educating the community and bringing these resources together to ask questions and be able to mitigate further decline. Isolation is killing seniors. So please, let's be mindful of that.
Ms. Johnson.
Dr. Maxey, I just want to go ahead with you, sir.
I appreciate the program that you brought today. It's a wealth of information. I appreciate Ms. Inez and Ms. Griffin. I'd like each of you to have just a couple of minutes to say last words before Dr. Walks and Dr. Neighbor-Stevens and myself make our final comments.
Lynn, could you please put your information in the chat? And
yes, I will.
Someone also asked a question in the chat that I responded to fairly quickly, and I just wanted to recap it just real quick. It was asked, does Medicaid have the right to access your trust after you pass for what they paid for your care when you were alive. And I just typically wrote that. I wrote that typically you would not have to tell people that you have a trust. So trust is a private document. It's not necessarily something you need to share or tell everyone about. Okay. When you disclose you have a trust, then they want to get all into the details of your trust and things of that sort. And that can open up a can of worms that you just don't want to have happen. When you are applying for Medicare, applying for Medi-Cal and things of that sort, only answer the questions that you're being asked. Try not to give a bunch of information that is not being asked of you to give, okay? Again, your trust is a private document. It is not meant to be shared with everyone unless you need to do that.
That's important.
But do you have to pay for your care that you received when you were alive after you pass? Does Medicaid have the right to make you pay for that out of the trust though?
No, see, that's the part of having it in the trust. They're going after you. They're not going after your trust. So
okay, great.
Two different things.
Did you answer that in the chat? Were you able to put that answer in there? I don't know if
well, not that part, but I did,
No, that was great what you just explained verbally. I just want to know if they are reading. Lynn, Dr. Maxey, is it okay for Lynn to go ahead now with her last word?
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes, thank you. I just want to let you know that care managers, they're either social workers, they have degrees in gerontology, they're LCSWs, RNs. So this is someone that understands the healthcare system. It understands the complexities of dealing with the elderly. So it's not just someone that's just out there just figuring it out. They know the system. So they're there to guide and navigate the family in this complex system.
And they have all the information and resources and work very closely with healthcare professionals so that they can provide the value to the family, because again, the care manager is an out-of-pocket fee. That is not going to be covered by the government because that is considered, an extra luxury, kind of concierge care. And that's something that is a huge benefit for the reasons that have just been disclosed. So thank you, Lynn.
No, thank you so much. Dr. Walks?
Good afternoon, everyone. A couple of comments. I'm really enjoyed the program, enjoyed all of the information that was shared. I think it is so important. I also, as a psychiatrist, I'm very happy to hear Ms. Lynn Inez talk about being a psychiatric nurse. So much of the pressure that is put on individuals and families as they age. One of the things we didn't get to talk about is the opportunity for respite care and for churches and organizations and what have you to help as folks are trying to age in place. What I really wanted to do, though, with my final comments, Dr. Maxey, is to refer everyone to the disclaimer that the Black Health Trust has that's in the chat. And there are so many challenges with what the government is allowed to do and what organizations can do. And because we do cover the different states, Dr. Maxey is in California, Dr. Neighbor Stevens is someplace between Tennessee and Florida. I'm in Maryland most of the time, and the rules differ from state to state. So as we talk about what goes into your trust and who can find out and what you have to tell them, that's why that disclaimer is there for you to consult your legal person. And if that's the fiduciary in California, if that's the lawyer in Illinois, whoever it is that can help keep you and your heirs out of trouble and make sure you don't miss the opportunity. I think one of the things that Condra Griffith was sharing with us is how important it is to understand the opportunities that we have to protect ourselves, to protect our assets, and doing that thoughtfully and doing that carefully and doing that with the advice of a fiduciary, with the advice of an attorney, all of that, it just makes perfect sense. unless your doctor is Dr. Maxey, the person that has their own doctor for their doctor has the wrong doctor. And I think the person that has their own lawyer for their lawyer has the wrong lawyer. So it's really important to go to the disclaimer that we have for the Black Health Trust so that we do everything we can to protect ourselves. And these kinds of opportunities that we have to share information, this is for us to make sure we are asking all the right questions of our children who say, oh, don't worry, granddad, I'll take care of you. Hold up, young sir or young ma'am. Let me make sure you know all the questions so that you understand what taking care of me means. Or for a younger person who's saying, oh no, grandma, granddad, I'll take care of you. No, ask all the questions so you know what you're taking on. This elder care part of our society is not done well by us as individuals. And so folks like Mary Alice Johnson and Lynn Inez and Condra Griffith are people that can help us to ask the right questions and get things done well. It is so important. I still think, despite the fact that these wonderful ladies are doing a wonderful job, I still think that healthcare is the #1 reason for bankruptcy in America. I still think that a lot of people are really not understanding the opportunity to protect their assets and to live well into old age. Now, Dr. Maxey's too young to worry about that stuff. But for the rest of us, we need to make sure that we are absolutely thinking these thoughts. So thank you all so much for what you brought to us today.
Thank you, Dr. Watts.
You're so welcome. I cannot thank Condra and Lan enough. Thank you, my trusted referral partners and friends, for bringing your expertise here today. I'm so grateful. And Dr. Maxey, I'm eternally grateful to you for this opportunity to help bring the information to educate, because we have to get it out there, to Dr. Walk's point.
Well, thank you. Dr. Nabor-Stevens?
Thank you, Dr. Maxey. Thank you, guests. You have enlightened us. You've also challenged us. And I hope that our audience here with us today and those who see the show in its archived format will take advantage of the information and begin very critical planning process that we all need to do. And if we don't do it, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So please take the message and start doing your family planning.
Well, thank you so much. And Mary Alice Johnson, I want to eternally thank you for this help. And I'm going to challenge us to use our organization of the National Medical Association. I'm going to get the advice of both Dr. Walks and Dr. Nabor-Stevens, which Board of Trustees committee this would best go to as a consideration, maybe health policy. I'm not sure, but this needs to be something that's thought out, that's brought to the forefront. It's one thing to get all the skilled in taking care of heart attacks and brain strokes and kids dying, but we need to be able to have appropriate elder care. Dr. Walks, even many of our people don't have enough sophistication to go bankrupt. They just bankrupt everybody below them and their family. So we need to really bring this forward in our medical education. And I think the NMA might be a good place to start. And I'd like to take Mary Alice Johnson and her team and present it to the appropriate body of the NMA for consideration. Our next convention in next August is in New York City. We should be well on our way towards that. So I'm gonna get the input from Dr. Nabor-Stevens, who's a former board member. And we have many of our past presidents online with us. And we'd like to do that very much. So again, thank you, ladies, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Griffin, and Ms. Inez for giving us such information today. I want everybody.
Dr. Maxey.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but this just came to me speaking about what you're saying. We are pursuing generational wealth through generational health.
Man.
That's good. That's good. Well, we thank everybody. And Simon, we thank you for your input down in Florida, from Florida. We thank Dr. Nabor-Stevens and Dr. walks. And I want everybody to enjoy a good rest of your Sunday afternoon. Again, thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
everyone.
Maxey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.